Welcome to the White Spring Bunker. These halls were built to safeguard some of the most prestigious members of the United States government. Now we are all that remains. Though we are always looking for men and women capable of helping us restore what has been lost. In return, we offer this, our refuge from the world above. Please, take your time and look around. We've made great efforts to restore the place to its former glory. Welcome, member, to our little enclave.
Welcome, members. I am the Operative, your designated tour guide and host here at the White Spring. The Colonel has approved a special briefing today, and as Modus has confirmed that you've all signed and submitted your Sigma Omega security applications, we can proceed. As a warning, the information to be discussed is not to leave this briefing room. Anyone found to have violated these terms will be immediately exiled to the nearest Fisher Site listening post. Is that understood? Good. Now we have prepared a multi-part brief on a key Enclave project and asset. Due to the sensitive nature of this information, its access is limited to only a select few within our little enclave. You may be aware that the Enclave performs a variety of missions in Appalachia. These range from scouting, protecting settlements, to securing vital technology and instilling American values on the inhabitants. There are times when the Enclave must eliminate a particular threat or send a message. Our teams will sometimes take direct action, although the Colonel prefers that we work behind the scenes to help shape the future of the region. A dagger-like approach, if you will. Then there are times when we need to use a ripper instead. That's where our Special Operations branch comes in, to find a threat and eliminate it through any means necessary. Until recently, Special Operations consisted of a single individual. You may have heard the name whispered around the bunker. Today, we will begin to discuss subject FV9030.001, or as she is better known, Major Lilith. Before we get started, there are a few regulations that you must follow. Number 1. Do not, under any circumstances, engage Major Lilith in idle conversation. Number 2. Do not, under any circumstances, accept an invitation from Major Lilith for a friendly sparring match. See addendum, Corporal Thomas incident. Number 3. Do not, under any circumstances, accept food from Major Lilith. And number 4. Do not, under any circumstances, comment on or critique Major Lilith's uniform, outfits, or behavior. Failure to adhere to these regulations will result in severe and possibly fatal consequences. You will discover exactly why these regulations are necessary, but also why Major Lilith is an invaluable asset to our plans for Appalachia. Now we will begin before the Great War and review the personal electronic mail archives and personal logs of one Dr. Lucius Alastair. He was a senior researcher at Westech, a brilliant geneticist, and also a former resident of Vault 76. Berkeley Springs Public Network Access Terminal, April 4, 2075. To Dr. Lucius Alastair, from Westech HR. Subject, welcome. Dr. Alastair, it is with great pleasure that we welcome you to your new assignment at our state-of-the-art Appalachian facility. We hope you find the accommodations in Berkeley Springs to your liking. Full orientation will be conducted upon your first day at the office. Transportation has already been arranged and you should expect pickup at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Please see your HR representative, Julia Towers, if you have any questions. Berkeley Springs Public Network Access Terminal, July 8, 2075. To Dr. Lucius Alastair, from Appalachian Public Utility District. Subject, request for additional power. Appeal. Dr. Alastair, you submitted an appeal to our decision to reject your application for an additional power line to be installed in your property. Since you were unable to provide documentation or justification, it was standard operating procedure to deny your request. After receiving additional information from your employer, Westech, you have been granted an exception under the Federal Emergency War Powers Act. A technician will be dispatched to your property next Monday. Thank you for your service to our country. Research Terminal, property of the Westech Corporation. Experiment Note Logs, Dr. Lucius Alastair. FEV Log, July 22, 2075. After receiving approval to move my research off-site, it took an additional 2 months to secure authorization to add power necessary to run the equipment needed to further purify and test the latest FEV samples. I'm not going to ask what strings the EVP pulled, but getting labeled vital to the war effort seems to have lit a fire under the local utility folks. Between that and the additional construction requirements for the lab here, I've accumulated quite a bit of debt with management. They expect results, and I plan to deliver. FEV log, September 1st, 2075. The latest samples were delivered via secure courier this afternoon. Analysis still shows significant instability in the viral strains, which explains the vastly different results the staff have seen in their experimentation. I believe their approach lacks the finesse necessary to suppress the negative elements of the virus and highlight the positive. I have procured several puppies from the local breeder and will conduct a series of experiments to determine if my process is superior. Berkeley Springs Public Network Access Terminal, September 21st, 2075. To Lucius, from Bill and Deborah. Subject, dinner? Hey Lucius, haven't seen you around much lately. Debbie and I wanted to see if you and the missus wanted to go out and get some barbecue tomorrow night in Huntersville. September 21st, 2075. To Bill, from Lucius. Subject, regarding dinner? Bill, sorry haven't kept up. Work's been crazy and the wife's been traveling. Hey, I'd stay away from Huntersville for a while, chum. How about we grab some pizza in town instead? Research Terminal, property of the West Tech Corporation. Experiment note logs, Dr. Lucius Alastair. FEV log, November 15th, 2075. Abject failure. 3 of the puppies showed the exact same mutations as been seen in the main facility. One suffered from uncontrollable tumor growth and had to be terminated, and the final showed signs of even more severe mutations and nearly broke containment. Obviously, the viral strain, as is completely unsuitable. I will make the appropriate adjustments. Berkeley Springs Network Access Terminal, July 4th, 2076. To Dr. Lucius Alastair, from Vault-Tec. Subject, selection for Vault 76. Dr. Alastair, in recognition of your efforts on behalf of the United States, you have the honor of being selected for entry into Vault 76 in the case of nuclear war. Only the best and brightest have been chosen, and it will be on your shoulders that future generations will rebuild our great country. Should it be required, of course. A Vault-Tec representative will be contacting you shortly for an in-person interview and orientation. Please ensure that your wife is available as well, as she has also been selected for our program. Thank you. Research Terminal, property of the West Tech Corporation. Experiment notes log, Dr. Lucius Alastair. FEV log, July 5th, 2076. The selection for Vault 76 was unexpected. I certainly hope that the management doesn't expect a nuclear war, as it would cause almost irreparable damage to my research. My wife is excited at the project, but I'm not. As such, I've submitted a request for a secondary and tertiary lab setup, along with secure access to the main file repository. I've been assured that these arrangements will be approved via current DoD contract requests and fulfilled as soon as possible. FEV log, August 3rd, 2076. I was called to the main West Tech research facility as one of my neighbors was apprehended by military authorities trying to enter Huntersville. It was very unfortunate that he mentioned my name to the soldiers, as it created unnecessary complications. I've already been informed that William will be added to the queue for additional experimentation. I was asked to assist in the process with my own condition that I be allowed to test my own strain on the subject. Berkeley Springs Public Access Terminal, August 3rd, 2076. To Lucius, from Deborah. Subject, Bill? Lucius, Bill didn't come home last night. He said he was going to go out to Huntersville. He couldn't resist getting some barbecue. You know it's his favorite. Your office is right down from there, isn't it? Could you check and see if you might have had a few too many and found a room for the night? August 4th, 2076. To Deborah, from Lucius. Subject, regarding Bill? Debbie! Bill's just fine. He needed some time to sleep it off. It'd be great if you could come down to the office tomorrow and get him. Thanks. Research Terminal, property of the West Tech Corporation. Experiment notes log, Dr. Lucius Alastair. FEV log, August 19th, 2076. The experiment on the child was a qualified success. As unfortunate as William's apprehension was, when his wife approached me to help in locating him, it was an interesting opportunity to have his 2 test subjects available at the same time and be able to observe social interactions between those exposed to the current FEV test strain. During the experiment, I found Deborah's attitude to be extremely uncooperative. That particular strain yielded promising results despite the outcomes. It was noted that the physical mutations were somewhat less apparent in both subjects, whereas physical aggression was enhanced. I found it necessary to deny both subjects food for 3 days, wherein the infected Williams attacked, killed, and proceeded to eat his wife. Afterwards, when he realized what he had done, he slammed his own head against the cell wall until he cracked open his own skull and self-terminated. Overall, the results were fascinating, and additional analysis will be required to isolate the genes which were most associated with violence and not physical mutations. Berkeley Springs Public Network Access Terminal, August 20th, 2076. To all residents, Berkeley Springs, from Berkeley Springs Police Department. Subject, William and Deborah Childs. All residents, please be aware that we have issued an APB, All Points Bulletin, to locate William and Deborah Childs. They were reported missing 1 week ago. Any citizens with information regarding their whereabouts or who may have seen them last should report to the Berkeley Springs PD immediately. Thank you. Research Terminal, property of the West Tech Corporation. Experiment Notes Log, Dr. Lucius Alastair. FEV Log, November 5th, 2076. Further experimentation on human and animal subjects has led to the successful isolation of a viral strain which inhibits physical mutations but accentuates both enhanced physical strength and intelligence. The requirement for human experimentation are far outside the capabilities of my current lab. Therefore, I've requested that both Site B and Site C be activated. Since construction was finished several months ago, I expect to transfer my current files and subjects to both facilities within 2 weeks. FEV Log, February 25th, 2077. Despite several setbacks, work is progressing. I've asked management to provide at least 6 more test subjects, including at least 1 child under the age of 5. I received approval for everything else I would require, but for some reason the child has not been provided as per my previous request. Perhaps I can overcome this challenge by procuring a child of my own. I know my wife has mentioned the desire to procreate. Is this the solution I'm seeking? FEV Log, October 20th, 2077. So far, attempts at procreation have been unsuccessful. Instead, I focused on the adult subjects and achieved partial success. I believe I have isolated a very promising strain of the virus, but that using it in adults is not ideal. If I can find a child, or better yet a baby, to expose, I believe the physical mutations could be suppressed entirely. As a precautionary measure, I have terminated all experiments at Site B and relocated all relevant data and test subjects, not expired, to Site C. File backup is complete, and I still have remote access to the main files from here if required. I also have samples of the latest strain at storage at the site, with 3 samples with me at all times. My last update to management included almost a full record of the last set of experiments, but I purposely omitted details regarding the need for a child or baby. I cannot let the squeamishness of others impede the advancement of scientific progress. Berkeley Springs Public Network Access Terminal, October 23rd, 2077. To Dr. Lucius Alastair from Vault-Tec. Subject, departure imminent. Please report to your designated Vault 76 rally point. If you do not report on time, your entry to the vault will be forfeit. Open Vault-Tec packet A-113 and follow the instructions included. Research Terminal, property of the West Tech Corporation. Experiment Notes Log, Dr. Lucius Alastair. FEV Log, October 23rd, 2077. We received the recall notice. My wife and I will be leaving for the Vault 76 rally point in less than an hour. I've deleted many of the supplementary files, and everything else is now at Site C. It should remain secure until such time as I can restart my work. As a secondary precaution, I have samples necessary on my person for safekeeping. I've already made arrangements with West Tech and Vault-Tec to be allowed to bring these samples with me. Site C is currently file corrupted. White Spring Bunker Network, version 0.19. White Spring Modus Terminal, property of the United States Military. Personnel Archives. Subject, Major Lilith Alastair. Vault 76 Data Archive. Data obtained from Vault 76 Data Core Burst Transmission. Note, Sigma Omega clearance required. Special Project WSTK-001A-00. Personal Project Log. Dr. Lucius Alastair, Ph.D., West Tech. This is Dr. Lucius Alastair. I was formerly a senior research fellow at the FEV project at West Tech, Appalachia Division. Currently, I am a resident of Vault 76 and have started this log to detail my further experiments on a variation of the standard FEV strain. I won't detail the history of FEV, but suffice it to say it is a revolutionary advancement in genetic engineering, designed by teams at West Tech to be used to create the next generation of super soldiers and food sources for the United States government. Although our pre-war experiments were less than successful, I believe that a much weaker version of the virus can be used to enhance an individual's strength. and intelligence far more than the clumsy and temporary narcotics that most individuals rely on, such as Psycho, Buffout, or Mentats. Although Vault 76 lacks the strict environmental controls of my former West-Tech lab, I'm confident that I will be able to conduct my experiments here and keep detailed notes on my progress. Once the vault reopens, I will return to the West-Tech facility and upload my results. I assume that the company will have fulfilled its plans for post-war continuation and our work will go on. Project details. A single test subject will be inoculated with version E452-A.01 of the FEV virus. This weakened strain, a further development of the E542 branch of the virus, should maximize the benefits of DNA manipulation without the outward transformation noted by our staff in prior versions. If physical manifestations of the virus become evident, the test subject will be terminated immediately. If Phase 1 testing is successful, no physical manifestation with a second check-in at puberty, then Phase 2 will proceed and monitoring will continue. Test subject, human infant. Time of first inoculation, 6 months, 3 days. Results, notes. Test subject 001 was inoculated with a weakened FEV virus at 8 a.m. this morning. Despite registering a slight fever for approximately 3 hours, the subject showed no outward signs of infection or physical manifestation of the typical FEV characteristics. Note: I have not told my wife about the experiment. I felt that even with her background, she would not have approved using our daughter as a test subject. Although I was confident of success, it would have been harder to terminate the baby if required, should my wife be directly involved. As an interesting aside, my wife named the child Lilith. If the experiment is successful, the name may prove to be apt. The first woman of a new line of human evolution. Test subject, human infant. Experiment update, 12 months, 14 days. Test subject 001 continues to develop normally according to the standard milestones of infant development. She started crawling at 5 months and walking at 11 months. Although this is slightly accelerated, it does not currently fall outside the norms. There have also been no physical manifestations of any typical FEV symptoms, much to my own relief. The only abnormality I've noted is a distinct preference for meat by the child and a rejection of almost all plant-based food substitutes and rations. Note: had a slight scare last night. My wife was breastfeeding Lilith and the baby bit her, rather roughly. Luckily, her baby teeth had only begun to emerge, so although painful, it was transitory. Test subject, human child. Experiment update, 5 years, 3 months, 22 days. Test subject 001 has undergone significant advancements in perceived intelligence and heightened strength. I've had to take corrective actions with the child after one particular play date resulted in other child suffering from a dislocated shoulder. Luckily, my wife has chalked it up to precocious child's play, but I am concerned that further incidents may occur. In school, the child is showing enhanced intelligence and interest in human and animal biology. I will continue to encourage her activities and give her access to my old high school textbooks. If she's able to comprehend and work her way through them, it will be a very good indication that my project will be successful. Her diet abnormalities continue, however. She recently informed us that the food stinks, and she's been consuming large quantities of meat-related products. Addendum. Security Officer Snyder stopped by our quarters today. The class cat, Fluffy Wiggums, went missing a couple of days ago. Lilith was the last child seen playing with him. I informed him that no, we had not seen the cat. Lilith also denied anything as well. Test subject, human child. Experiment update, 9 years, 2 months, 7 days. Test subject 001 has suffered a series of setbacks in recent months. Luckily, the physical manifestations of FEV are not present, but I am concerned that other aspects of the viral DNA and behavioral manifestation may be occurring. I've been forced to discipline the subject on numerous occasions, and few, if any, of the other children will associate with her. The one exception is Valeria Faustina. Apparently, my wife worked with her parents before the war. I've learned not to delve too deeply into my wife's work, as she has learned with mine. It will be interesting to watch their interactions. Thus far, I have noted no incidents between the two, so I will encourage further activities together. As for the other setbacks mentioned above, in my recent examinations of the test subject, I have been forced to use mild sedatives to ensure compliance. This has become necessary after she refused my first attempt at an examination last month, and she almost bit off one of my fingers. I've also had to speak to the security staff on several occasions. Vault animals have been going missing on a regular basis. All of the attention is interfering with my research. I will continue to monitor the test subject more closely and may have to limit her contact with others until I can understand what might be happening. Addendum. Test subject returned my biology textbooks. Upon examination, many of the pages involving human anatomy and vivisection were missing. This is very interesting development and will bear further study. Test subject, human child, preteen. Experiment update, 12 years, 6 months, 1 day. It's growing increasingly difficult to maintain control over the test subject. Her intelligence and strength have exceeded even my expectations, and I fear that she may be aware of the experiment. I caught her examining my terminal yesterday, and I've changed all the passwords to be safe. A quick examination of the files don't show any unauthorized access, but I am becoming concerned. Over the past 2 years, the test subject has become increasingly isolated and withdrawn, even beyond what I had wished in an attempt to preserve the integrity of the experiment. Her diet continues to be mostly meat-based products, and her constant complaining about the declining quality of our rations has become even more incessant. My wife believes that this is just part of her growing up, but I believe that we may be seeing signs of further biological manifestations of FEV. The test subject is also taken to disappearing for hours on end. I've attempted to track her, but even within the confines of the vault, I am unable to ascertain exactly where she goes. As I expect that puberty will begin shortly, I have taken precautions should termination of the subject be necessary. I procured both a sufficient quantity of toxins and also a firearm to cover potential eventualities. Test subject, human teen. Experiment update, 14 years, 11 months, 5 days. I believe my experiment has both succeeded and failed at the same time. The test subject has continued to exceed expectations in both mental acuity and physical aptitude. Her strength appears to have plateaued at a point at least twice what I would have expected for her age, but her intelligence continues to increase. Unfortunately, this has also caused an increasing number of incidents around the vault. As her interests expanded into other areas, she has become proficient in advanced chemistry, with the result of several small explosives going off. Luckily, no one has been hurt, but I fear this may prove to be the undoing of the experiment. I've also been forced to employ more advanced encryption on my terminal. She has been actively trying to get into my files, despite harsh discipline, including using more elevated levels of sedatives. I surmise that FEV may make her somewhat immune to the narcotics that I use. My wife has been increasingly suspicious of my activities, although for the moment she has been helping me keep the test subject under a degree of control. As to the other incidents, the test subject has ceased eating plant-based food entirely, but she's also ceased to complain about the food, though she has also ceased to communicate with us much at all. I fear that despite what I believe is a real likelihood of success, that some inherent instability in the virus will force my termination of the subject before Reclamation Day. Addendum. A thorough search of the test subject's room was undertaken shortly after this update. I found the bones of several small animals. Even a cursory examination was enough to identify them as being from a cat, a dog, and several mice. All the bones showed signs of teeth marks. Test subject, human teen. Experiment update, 16 years, 8 months, 22 days. That day that I had long feared has arrived. After the past 2 years, this test subject is becoming completely uncontrollable. My examinations of her have been limited to only those times which I am able to administer the strongest possible dose of narcotics. I've also been unaware of her growing reputation within the vault, until my wife confronted me with the news that Lilith was no longer welcome at school. Although I could not divulge to my wife the full extent of the experiment that I've been conducting for the last 16 years, I was forced to reveal at least some details that our daughter was different. The resulting altercation with her was unpleasant. I am also certain that the test subject overheard at least parts of our conversation. This, coupled with evidence that the test subject may have breached my terminal security, has led me to the decision that she must be terminated. The evidence of her activities and signs of obvious psychosis have made this fate predetermined. She spends so little time in our quarters now that I fear that the option to terminate her via injection is no longer viable. Addendum. Experiment update. 16 years, 8 months, 23 days, 2 hours. We believe we found where the test subject has been hiding. For some reason, Lilith returned to our quarters today, but promptly left with something from her room. My wife was able to follow her to the maintenance section and to what appears to be part of the old water reclamation facility. I'm not sure yet how I'll handle the termination of the test subject, but I have the 10mm pistol, and we will be going back to the maintenance facility with additional staff. I will finish uploading these logs to the secure mainframe and hope that the details of the experiment, along with the biological data will allow me to continue my work after Reclamation Day. The results have been promising to date, and I believe that there is an opportunity to learn from these mistakes that have been made in the viral composition and its effect on the human psyche. I will provide a further update upon my return.
Audio log, Lilith. Audio log enabled. Test subject, Lilith. I have a fucking name, Dad. Alistair. Experiment update. Whatever day today is. Fuck. I'm hungry. So, dear old Dad thought I was just some old science experiment of his. Well, I guess the joke's on him. Boy, his terminal was easier to crack than Fluffy's skull. Thought he was going to end his little experiment? See, that really wasn't going to work for me. I am happy he gave me those textbooks, though. It makes things so much easier than just trial and error. Who knew you could get that much meat off of a cat? And yeah, those drugs of his didn't do anything to me. But I played along. Let him underestimate me. Don't feel bad at all. Though it's a shame Mom had to go snooping too. I would have just been happy to get Dad alone. That was the plan anyway. Show him what he really created. And I bet he wouldn't have tasted too bad either. But I guess Mom's old skills weren't entirely rusty, since she found my little hidey hole, or at least close enough to it. I couldn't take the chance that she'd stumble on what I've really been doing all these years. I kinda wish Valeria could have seen it. She was the only person who kinda got it. She was strange, like me. Maybe not exactly, but I could see it in her eyes, and boy, oh boy, did she love my little science experiments, especially the big booms. Dad got at least part of the send-off he deserved. I mean, really? Thought he was going to put a bullet in me? And Mom? Well, can't make an omelet without breaking some skulls. It was easy enough to get the supplies I needed. Once I got my hands on that fusion core, the rest was simple. Bet they never even saw the tripwire I set up. The moment they lifted that grate, the nitrate charge would have cracked the fusion core. I figured the blast would take out everything within 30 feet, and my calculations were entirely correct. I'm not sure how much would have been left, but, well, I guess it would have been cooked, right? And Bobby, what a troll. But he had the key I needed, so it all ended up worth it. Though he's on my list too, and if I can get him alone, I'll take what I really want this time. Fuck 'em all. This vault, that overseer bitch. Reclamation Day is coming up, and there is a whole wide world out there to taste. Appalachia ain't seen nothing like me.
As Modus's access to the Vault 76 mainframe and associated systems was terminated before Reclamation Day, these logs represent all that could be scavenged from backups located at the DIA facility at Sugar Grove. And that completes part 1 of our briefing today. Next time, we will learn more about Lilith's history upon leaving the vault and how she came to be part of our little enclave. Modus has prepared refreshments in the Operations Center. Again, I must remind you of the sensitive nature of what you've heard here, and not to repeat it to anyone without Sigma Omega clearance. Thank you again, members, for joining us here on the Modus Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe, and you can look forward to new episodes each week, detailing the history of the new Enclave in Appalachia. I'd also like to thank Nate Jones, our esteemed voice of Modus, and a huge thank you to Lucy Middleton for providing the voice of Lilith Alistair. And a shout out to the Fallout 76 Writers Guild on the Apocalyptic Aristocracy Discord, and our favorite character artist, Jeremiah Johnson. He's responsible for some incredible Enclave creations, and I encourage you to check out his artwork and become a patron on his Patreon at www.patreon.com/callme_nobody. That's NOBODI Again, that's www.patreon.com/callme_nobody, NOBODI. And lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.